Welcome to Daily English Flow. Stay until the end for a special bonus tip. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
This is the brief on decoding real-world English. You know, if you've ever aced an English exam but frozen up in a noisy pub, it's because classroom English is just a polite illusion, while real native speech is a messy, fast-paced wall of sound. To actually survive out there, we've got to understand why it's so messy, retrain our ears, and honestly, unlearn those textbook rules. First, let's talk about connected speech. See, native speakers don't pronounce words individually. We just swallow consonants and merge sounds together to save energy. It's basically acoustic camouflage. The words are definitely there, but they're blended so tightly you can't spot them. That's exactly how "what are you going to do" effortlessly turns into "what you going to do." Second, we've got the ultimate listening fix, micro-transcription. Since the words are camouflaged, you've got to force your brain to see them. Just take a 30-second clip of fast, unscripted speech and write down every single word. Yep, even the ums. Comparing that to the actual subtitles totally exposes your phonetic blind spots. Like, did they say could have? Or did you just discover the acoustic reality of coulda? Finally, let's break down spoken syntax. Because once your ears finally catch the words, you'll realize the grammar itself is completely broken. Real speech drops obvious words, asking stuff like, "You coming?" We also use modern shortcuts all the time, swapping out said for was like, as in, he was like, no way. So, mastering real-world English really means ditching pristine classroom audio, embracing dropped consonants, and accepting the beautiful chaos of unscripted speech. Stop expecting textbook perfection and start flowing with the rhythm of the streets.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely validate your frustration with fast-paced English and hand you the ultimate multi-skill toolkit to finally smash right through that B2 wall. Seriously, if you've been stuck at this intermediate plateau, feeling like your progress is just totally stalled out no matter how much you study, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to completely rewire how you approach language learning. So let's dive right into this. Have you ever flawlessly passed a B2 listening exam only to completely freeze up when you try to follow a real conversation in a noisy, crowded pub? You know the feeling. You catch a random word here, a laugh there, but the actual meaning, it just slips right past you. It's like you're hitting this continuous muddy wall of noise. It's incredibly frustrating, right? Well, let me tell you, it is absolutely not a flaw in your intelligence. It's just a flaw in your training. Here is the brutal reality. You've been relying on pristine, educational English. You're super used to audio recorded in these quiet little studios, spoken by professional voice actors who perfectly articulate every single syllable and pause politely. But you're struggling out in the wild because real English, it is incredibly messy and chaotic. People talk over each other, they swallow their consonants, they mash vowels together. We absolutely have to upgrade your ears from classroom mode to street mode. To make that upgrade, we'll hit 5 key areas today: the B2 listening wall, decoding acoustic chaos, hacking reading and writing, the street lexicon, and finally, embracing broken grammar. Starting right off with Section 1, the B2 listening wall. The absolute core of this problem is something called connected speech. Basically, these are the mechanical tricks native speakers use just to save physical energy. They use elision to drop sounds entirely, so next door becomes next door. They use assimilation to morph sounds together, turning didya into didja. And they even use intrusion to add totally invisible ghost sounds, making go out sound like go out. If your brain is desperately waiting for a crisp textbook consonant, you're going to completely miss the rest of the sentence. And hey, beyond connected speech, you're actually fighting 2 other massive barriers. The first is acoustic masking in loud rooms. You might know this as the cocktail party effect, where your brain has to actively suppress background noise, like traffic or loud music, just to tune into one single voice. The second barrier? A wild, wild variety of global accents. Real English isn't just standard American or British RP. It's Scottish rolls, it's Australian vowel shifts, it's high-fluency, non-native accents that completely shatter your textbook phonetic map. So to build some cognitive resilience against all this acoustic garbage, you can apply 4 elite strategies. First, practice toggling between listening for the general gist and then zeroing in on specific details. Second, intentionally slow authentic podcasts down to a 0.8 speed bridge. This preserves the natural intonation but gives your brain just a fraction of a second more to decode the sounds. Third, try taking a blind audio walk outside. Actually go walk near traffic while listening to practice filtering out environmental noise. And finally, dedicate a whole week to an accent immersion sprint to recalibrate your phonetic decoder to one very specific regional sound. Let's move on to Section 2, Decoding Acoustic Chaos. I literally absolutely love this concept. Your ears are the architects. Your mouth is just the builder. You simply cannot produce a natural rhythm that you haven't already internalized through obsessive, careful listening. Now, at lower levels, you tend to give equal weight to every single word. But real English? It has this distinct, stress-timed bounce where the grammar words are swallowed whole so the important content words can really pop. If you fall into the over-articulation trap, you're going to sound stiff, super formal, and honestly, you might even freeze in dead silence when you forget a word. Native speakers, on the other hand, rely heavily on lazy reductions, like I'm gonna or lemme. Plus, they constantly use audio bridges, things like well, and which actually gives the brain a vital microsecond to search for vocabulary. Casual English is, well, quite frankly, it's lazy English. You can actively map this stress-timed balance by authentically shadowing real speakers. And I don't just mean repeating their words. I mean actively copying their breath, their pauses, and the exact pitch of their voice. You should also deliberately integrate reductions into your own speech, like write it down when you hear got to become gotta, and then force yourself to use it in a sentence today. This melodic mapping will instantly make you sound way less robotic and much more fluid. Jumping right into Section 3, Hacking, Reading, and Writing. Okay, I want to share a secret weapon for your ears. By transcript mining and actively weaning yourself off subtitles, you actually teach your brain what messy, unscripted English looks like on paper. Textbooks follow very strict rules, right? But reading the raw transcript of a reality TV show or a casual podcast, it reveals all those false starts, self-corrections, and random fragments. Watching a scene once with subtitles and then a second time totally without them forces your brain to focus 100% of its processing power purely on the sounds. It's the fastest cure for subtitle dependency syndrome. Now, if you want to completely shatter the illusion of your listening comprehension, you need to step into the transcription gym with this 4-step protocol. It will totally expose your phonetic blind spots. Take just a 30-second clip of fast speech and write down literally every single word. I mean, everything, including the ums and ahs. Do it blindly first, and then compare it to the real captions. It is such an incredibly humbling exercise. You'll quickly realize you thought you were hearing every word, but your brain was actually just hallucinating half of it based on context. Which brings us to Section 4, the street lexicon. To survive the real world, you have to harvest a street lexicon built on 3 pillars: high-frequency phrasal verbs, emotional slang, and pop culture references. Think about it. If you don't know the cultural shorthands like a trending meme, a viral quote, or a classic movie line, entire sentences are going to mean absolutely nothing to you. It doesn't matter how perfect your grammar is. You have to consume native pop culture to build this internal database. Check out this stark contrast. Native speakers abandon formal Latin verbs 90% of the time in casual chats. We don't postpone things, we put them off. We don't solve things, we figure them out. And what's absolutely crucial for your listening skills is that in fast speech, these phrasal verbs literally merge together into single chunks. Figure it out becomes a mashed together figure it out. Your ears have to recognize these merged, messy sounds as a single vocabulary item. And finally, Section 5, Embracing Broken Grammar. Real English leans super heavily on spoken syntax, and uncovering these native secrets is totally vital. This includes ellipsis, which is just naturally dropping obvious words. It includes dislocating subjects to the front or back of a sentence, which linguists call heads and tails, just to manage cognitive load in real time. It uses tag questions like, isn't it, not to actually ask a real question, but to force agreement from the listener. And incredibly often, it uses the word like as a quotative instead of the word said. You see, real grammar isn't some rigid test of perfection. It's a highly efficient tool natives use to manage information and build human connection in real time. A textbook will tell you to say, and then my boss said, but real speech sounds more like, and then my boss was like. If your brain freezes up trying to process the word like as a preposition of similarity in that exact moment, the entire story falls apart. You have to learn to just accept these grammatical shortcuts. So my final question to you today is this. Are you ready to stop expecting native speakers to sound like walking grammar books? Are you ready to embrace the beautiful chaos and confidently step out into the real world? The territory of real English is messy. It's constantly evolving, and yeah, it breaks practically all the rules you learned in school. But once you stop fighting that wall of sound and start flowing with it, using the tools we covered in this explainer, you will finally break through. Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and go start hiking your listening today.
There is this incredibly frustrating scenario that I think literally every single language learner has experienced at least once.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Picture this, right? You're doing everything right. You can understand your English teacher perfectly. You absolutely aced your B2 listening exam. You're watching YouTube videos in English and catching every joke.
You're feeling pretty good about yourself.
Exactly. You feel great. But then you step into a crowded pub or, I don't know, a cafe with a group of native speakers. You pull up a chair, and the moment they start talking to each other, it suddenly sounds like they are speaking a completely different language.
It's just a brutal reality check, honestly. I mean, maybe you catch a random isolated word here or there,
Right.
or maybe you hear someone laugh and you just kind of fake a smile and pretend you got the joke.
We've all been there.
But the actual meaning just slips right past you in this continuous muddy wall of noise. You're just sitting there wondering if you actually know this language at all.
Which is just such a defeating feeling, You're stuck in what today's source material actually calls classroom mode.
Yeah, that's a great term for it.
Because your brain expects the clean, polite audio of an educational setting, but real English just doesn't sound like that. So today, we're taking the sources you brought in, and we are decoding this B2 listening wall.
Yes.
The mission of this deep dive is to completely rewire how you process spoken English, basically upgrading your ears from classroom mode to the chaotic reality of street mode. And our source today is this Masterclass guide that connects advanced listening to all 6 core language skills, which is just fascinating.
It really is. But to do that, we kind of have to acknowledge this somewhat uncomfortable truth about how language is usually taught.
Oh boy, yeah.
If you are hitting this wall, you've essentially been fed a sterilized version of English for years. I mean, you've been trained on audio, recorded in quiet, pristine studios.
With perfect pronunciation.
Yes, right. Spoken by voice actors who articulate every single syllable with perfect precision. They pause at the end of a sentence. They take a nice deep breath. Real native speakers do not do that.
No, not at all.
Real speech is messy, it's incredibly fast, and people are just constantly talking over each other.
It actually makes me think of music. It's like you've been studying a pristine, beautifully mixed studio album your whole life.
Okay, yeah.
But then when you go to the pub, what you actually get is a chaotic, noisy live bootleg recorded on a smartphone in the back row of a stadium. The songs are the same, but the acoustic reality is entirely different.
That is a fantastic analogy. And if we want to decode that live bootleg, we first have to dissect exactly why real English sounds like a wall of noise.
Right. What are the mechanics behind it?
Exactly. The sources point out these specific mechanical tricks native speakers use, usually completely unconsciously, by the way, that baffle B2 learners. There are basically 3 distinct acoustic barriers.
Okay, let's get into them.
So the first and really the most significant one is connected speech. Native speakers just do not pronounce words individually. They link them, they crush them down, and they completely drop sounds.
See, I always just thought people mumbled because they were being lazy.
Well, I mean, it is a form of physical laziness, but it's an incredibly structured, rule-based laziness.
Wait, really? Rule-based laziness?
Yeah. Because the human mouth is constantly trying to save physical energy. Moving your tongue and your jaw, it takes effort. So to speak faster, the brain just cuts corners.
Okay, that makes sense.
One of the main mechanisms here is elision, which is simply dropping complex sounds. Take the phrase next door.
Okay.
Saying the T in next and the D in door requires your tongue to hit the roof of your mouth twice in a row. It takes too long. So the mouth just deletes the T entirely. It becomes next door.
Oh, wow. Or how probably just becomes probably.
Yes, exactly.
The whole middle syllable just gets deleted because it's too much work for the lips.
Precisely. And then you have a more complex mechanism called assimilation, where sounds physically morph into entirely new sounds just to bridge a gap.
Like what?
Think about the phrase, did you? The D sound happens at the alveolar ridge, right behind your teeth. But the Y sound in U is a palatal sound, much further back in the mouth.
Right.
To get from the D to the Y quickly, the tongue compromises. It hits the middle of the palate and creates a J sound. So did you physically morph into vidja?
Didja, yeah. I say that all the
Or
time.
don't you morph into donshu? And we even have intrusion, where native speakers add ghost sounds, like turning go out into go out with a W in the middle.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because if I'm a learner and my brain is sitting there actively waiting to hear that crisp, clean T in the word next, I'm going to stall out.
Yep.
I'm going to miss the entire rest of the sentence while my working memory is stuck trying to find a consonant that the speaker never even bothered to produce.
And that right there is the crux of the B2 listening wall. At this level, listening is no longer a test of your vocabulary. You know all the words.
Right.
It is actually a test of acoustic processing. Your ear has to be trained to accept those missing sounds and rely entirely on the surrounding context.
Which perfectly brings up the second barrier the sources mentioned, which makes that acoustic processing even harder, and that's the cocktail party effect.
Oh, yes. Acoustic masking. Because in a textbook audio track, you are listening in a vacuum.
Pure silence.
Right.
Yeah.
But in real life, there's traffic, there's music, glasses clinking, 3 other conversations happening at the next table. The cognitive demand of tuning into one frequency while suppressing all that background noise is massive.
It feels like it's like driving through a really long tunnel while trying to manually tune an old analog radio dial.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it.
You're desperately trying to lock onto that one faint frequency, your friend's voice, while static and fragments of other stations just keep bleeding in and overpowering the signal. It's exhausting.
It is.
And you add the connected speech on top of that, and it's no wonder people just give up and nod politely.
Truly. And, we haven't even touched the third barrier yet, which is global accents. The textbook industry overwhelmingly defaults to standard American English or British received pronunciation, which is often called RP.
Right. RP is like that classic upper crust BBC News anchor voice, right?
Essentially, yes. It's a standard of pronunciation that's geographically neutral in the UK, but historically it's tied to upper-class education and broadcasting.
Okay.
The problem is only a tiny percentage of the actual British population speaks with traditional RP.
I mean, obviously.
If you walk into a real pub in Glasgow or Melbourne, Atlanta, Mumbai, you are dealing with Scottish rolls, Australian vowel shifts, Southern drawls, or high-fluency Indian English.
Yeah, totally different sounds.
Textbooks prepare you for a phonetic environment that barely exists in the wild.
Okay, so we've established that the world is noisy, people chew their words, and nobody sounds like a textbook voice actor. That's the wall.
That is the wall of sound.
So how do we actually train our brains to scale it? Because I can't just, pause the bartender and ask him to repeat his sentence at 0.5 speed without the background noise.
No, you definitely can't do that. But you can simulate those environments in your training.
Okay.
The source material provides 4 elite tactical strategies for this. The first is shifting how you approach native audio, using the gist versus detail toggle.
Right.
When learners listen to a fast native level podcast, their instinct is usually to try and translate 100% of the words on the first pass.
Which pretty much guarantees you'll fall behind. Like you
Yeah.
stall out on one word and miss the next 3 sentences.
Exactly. So instead, you have to actively force your brain into gist mode. On the first listen, you forbid yourself from caring about specific words. You only ask broad questions.
Like what?
Like, what is the emotional tone? Are they arguing? What's the overarching topic? Once you have that mental map, you rewind the audio, and on the second listen, you toggle into detail mode to catch the structural vocabulary.
That makes a lot of sense. The sources also suggest something called the 0.8x speed bridge, and I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical of this one.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, if I take a fast, authentic podcast and use my app to artificially slow it down to 0.8x speed, wait, isn't that just a crutch? Like, aren't we just going right back into the safety of educational English?
I get why you'd think that. It seems like it would be. But mechanically, it's completely different.
How so?
When you listen to educational English, the voice actors are fundamentally changing their pronunciation. They're unlinking the words, adding unnatural pauses, over-enunciating.
Right.
But when you digitally slow down authentic native audio, modern time-stretching algorithms preserve the exact pitch and format of the speech. All the connected speech is perfectly intact.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so what you're going to do is still what it's going to do. It just takes slightly longer to say.
Oh, I see. So the speaker is still mashing the sounds together. I'm just giving my brain's processing center an extra 20% of a second to decode the mashed up phones.
Exactly. You are preserving the natural connected speech and intonation, but just lowering the cognitive load.
That's brilliant.
And once your brain adapts to hearing those specific blended sounds at 0.8x, you bump the speed back to normal, and your ear recognizes the pattern much faster.
Now, my favorite strategy they mentioned for surviving the real world is the blind audio walk.
Yeah.
This addresses that cocktail party effect directly.
Right. It's such a brilliant exercise. Instead of sitting in your quiet bedroom with noise-canceling headphones, you put on a native podcast and you go for a walk outside in a really busy environment.
Like near traffic.
Yes. You let the real world interfere.
So a truck is going to drive by, the wind will blow across your earbuds, someone will walk past talking loudly, and you are absolutely guaranteed to miss words.
And that failure is the entire point of the exercise.
Really?
Yes, it builds what linguists call cognitive resilience. In a classroom, when a learner misses a word, panic sets in. On a blind audio walk, you're training your nervous system to stay calm.
To not panic.
Right. You miss a word because a bus drove past. You accept the gap in your knowledge, you look at the surrounding context, and you jump right back into the next sentence.
It's training you not to freeze up.
Exactly. And if your specific problem is struggling with a certain regional accent, the text suggests accent immersion sprints.
Oh, this sounded intense.
It is. If a Scottish accent completely baffles you, you don't just watch one YouTube video. You dedicate 7 full days exclusively to it.
That's Scottish.
Only Scottish. You watch Scottish stand-up comedy, Scottish news, Scottish vloggers. You completely cut off standard English to force your phonetic decoder to recalibrate to those new vowel boundaries.
Wow, just complete immersion.
Yeah. This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
How does just hearing this chaos actually help us produce it? Because listening is only half the equation.
Right, which brings us to the speaking shift. And the source lays down a pretty hard rule here. You cannot speak with a rhythm you haven't internalized.
It's impossible.
If your ear is stuck in the classroom, your mouth is stuck in the classroom.
And we hear this constantly with intermediate learners. They suffer from what we call textbook rhythm.
Right.
They speak with equal weight and equal time given to every single word in a sentence. It sounds robotic.
Like a metronome, like I am going to
the store.
Right, exactly. Now, some languages like Spanish or French are syllable timed, meaning each syllable gets roughly equal time. But English is a stress-timed language.
It has a bounce to it.
Yes, it operates on a bounce, almost like a heartbeat. The rhythm is driven entirely by the heavy, important content words, the nouns and main verbs.
Okay.
To keep that heartbeat rhythm, native speakers completely crush and swallow the functional grammar words. The prepositions, the auxiliary verbs, they become incredibly short, weak sounds.
So the store becomes, I'm going to go to the store.
Perfect, yeah.
The grammar is still there, but physically, it's just a quick little bridge to get to the important word, store. So how do we actively train our mouths to stop acting like a robot and start bouncing? The sources suggest authentic shadowing, but this goes far beyond just repeating a vocabulary word after a beep on an app.
It's more involved.
Much more. You find a short video clip of a native speaker, a TED speaker, a podcaster, an actor. You listen to a single sentence, pause it, and mimic it with intense physical detail.
So you aren't just copying the words. You have to copy the exact moment they take a breath.
Everything.
You copy how their pitch rises on a specific syllable or how their voice drops into that weird vocal fry at the end of a
Yes.
thought. If they mash kind of into kinda, you have to force your mouth to do the exact same physical movement.
It's almost like learning a dance choreography for your mouth. You are bypassing the logical grammar rules in your brain and building physical muscle memory for connected speech.
That's a great way to put it.
And you can also pair this with reduction integration.
What's that?
You keep a notepad, and every time you hear a native speaker reduce a phrase like gotta becoming gotta or let me becoming, let me write it down, and consciously force yourself to use it in your next conversation.
And mapping the intonation too, right? Like pitch goes up for excitement or questions, down for definitive statements.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. There are these speaking traps that B2 learners fall into. The text warns about the over-articulation trap, and I've totally noticed this with colleagues who speak English as a second language.
Oh, it's so common.
Sometimes they try so hard to speak perfectly and clearly that it actually backfires.
It really does. The learner thinks, I want to be understood, and I want to sound educated, so I will enunciate every single letter clearly.
Right.
But in casual English, over-articulating sounds highly unnatural because casual English relies on that lazy, connected speech. Hyperenunciation actually signals something else entirely to a native speaker.
It sounds stiff.
Stiff, overly formal, or even aggressive.
Yeah, like a parent scolding a child. I told you to. Clean your intro.
Exactly. To sound natural, you actually have to let go of perfection. You have to relax your jaw and just let the words bleed together.
And then there's the other major speaking trap the sources highlight, which is the silent freeze.
Oh, this is the worst.
It really is. You're mid-sentence, you forget the specific vocabulary word you need, and you just stop. Dead silence. The tension in the room just skyrockets.
It's so awkward. Native speakers forget words constantly, but they rarely freeze.
What do they do instead?
They employ thinking sounds. Things like, well, let me think, or, these filler words act as an audio bridge.
They keep the floor.
Right. They signal to the listener, I'm still holding the floor. I haven't finished my thought. Just give me a second.
So adopting those native filler words keeps the rhythm of the conversation alive while your brain scrambles in the background to find the missing word.
Exactly. It buys you time.
Okay, let's say someone is doing all of this. They're doing the blind audio walks, they're shadowing native speakers, but they are still hitting the wall. The live, unscripted speech is just fundamentally too fast for their brain to process. What is the backup plan here?
Well, the Masterclass suggests we need to use a visual backdoor.
A visual backdoor.
Right. If your ears are failing and your mouth is struggling to catch the bounce, you have to look at the sheet music. We need visual proof of this audio chaos.
Okay, how do we do that?
By reading unscripted speech, specifically through transcript mining.
So, like grabbing the transcript of an NPR interview or an unscripted BBC video and reading it simultaneously while listening to the audio?
Yes, because it creates a bridge between your eyes and your ears. Your eyes see the formal written words, what are you going to do?
Right.
But your ears hear the acoustic reality, what you're going to do. When you process them both simultaneously, it permanently maps that connected sound onto the written grammar in your brain. You're also highlighting discourse markers in the transcripts.
Like so they become audio signposts in real life.
Exactly.
They also talk about subtitle weaning. Now, obviously, turning on subtitles helps you understand a movie, but if you leave them on forever, aren't you basically just practicing your reading speed instead of your listening?
That is exactly the danger. Your brain is incredibly efficient. If it can get the meaning easily by reading, it will completely shut down the auditory processing center just to save energy.
Wow.
So subtitle, weaning, forces your brain to do the auditory work. You watch a fast-paced scene once with the subtitles on. Pass one, this handles the plot and the complex vocabulary.
Okay.
Then you immediately rewind, turn the subtitles off, and watch it again for pass two.
Because your brain already knows the meaning of the scene, it doesn't have to waste cognitive load on translating or worrying about the plot.
Precisely. You can allocate 100% of your cognitive processing power purely to decoding the speed and the phonetic sounds.
That is so smart.
It is the fastest way to break a subtitle dependency.
But what if you don't have a transcript or subtitles? Like, how do you actually test if your ear is improving in the real world?
Oh, this is where it gets tough.
The sources introduce an exercise called the microtranscription, Jim. And let me tell you, just reading about this exercise sounded painful.
It is a notoriously frustrating, humbling exercise, but it is perhaps the single most effective diagnostic tool you can use.
How does it work?
You take a 30-second clip of a street interview or two podcast hosts talking over each other.
Okay.
You sit down with a blank piece of paper and you try to write down every single word they say, every stutter, every dropped syllable. And no auto captions allowed.
That sounds intense. Yeah. What's fascinating here is, it just completely shatters the illusion of passive listening.
It really does. What's fascinating here is that when you write it down, that illusion is just gone.
Right. Because when you're just listening to a podcast while doing the dishes, you feel like you understand everything.
Sure.
But really, your brain is just floating on the context. When you are forced to dictate that 30-second clip word for word, you realize there are massive gaps where you actually have no idea what specific sounds the speaker just made.
And then you perform the autopsy.
The autopsy.
You compare your struggle-filled, messy draft to the official, accurate captions. This ruthlessly exposes your phonetic blind spots. For instance, you might see that the official caption says could have, but you wrote down could of.
Oh, which proves you aren't hearing the grammar rule, you were just writing down the acoustic reality of the sound coulda.
Exactly. It forces you to confront exactly where your ear is failing.
Man. Okay, so we've tackled the mechanics of sound, the rhythm, and how to visually map the language. But there is a final piece to this puzzle.
Yes, there is.
You can train your ears and mouth to handle the speed perfectly. But what happens when the actual vocabulary and grammar rules they're using just aren't in any textbook?
Welcome to the street lexicon.
The street lexicon.
The vocabulary of pubs, group chats, and just real life. And the primary pillar of the street lexicon is phrasal verbs.
Right, because this actually goes back to the history of the English language, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
English essentially has two vocabularies layered on top of each other.
It does.
After the Norman Conquest, French and Latin became the language of the upper class, the law, formal education. Words like postpone, socialize, and discover. But the common people just kept using their physical Anglo-Saxon root words.
Exactly. So instead of postpone, they used put off.
Right.
Instead of socialize, they used hang out. Instead of discover, they found out. Textbooks naturally lean toward the formal, Latin-based verbs because they look like Romance languages and they're just easier to explain.
Sure.
But in a casual pub, which is the modern equivalent of that informal setting, native speakers heavily prefer the physical Anglo-Saxon phrasal verbs.
And because of the connected speech we talked about earlier, these phrasal verbs morph into single, unrecognizable sound chunks.
Oh, absolutely.
Like figured out just becomes figure it out.
Figure it out, exactly. And beyond phrasal verbs, the street lexicon relies heavily on slang and cultural shorthand.
Right.
Native speakers use words as emotional placeholders rather than factual descriptors. Like someone might say, I'm literally dying of hunger.
They aren't actually dying.
No. Literally is just a marker for emotional emphasis there. Words like gutted or chuffed in the UK work the same way.
But the cultural shorthand is what really trips people up, I think.
Oh, for sure.
The source uses a great example. If someone says, he totally pulled a Walter White, all the grammar training in the world will not save you if you haven't seen the TV show Breaking Bad.
It's true. Your only defense there is to keep a slang harvest notebook.
A slang harvest notebook.
When you hear a phrase that clearly has meaning to the speakers but makes absolutely no logical sense to you, write it down and look it up on Urban Dictionary later.
Which brings us to the final barrier.
Yeah.
Spoken syntax. The broken rules.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, textbook grammar is a map, but spoken grammar is the actual messy territory.
Right.
In real-time speech, grammar is a tool for connection and speed, not a test of academic perfection. Native speakers break rules constantly to manage cognitive load.
And the most obvious one is ellipsis, right? Where they just drop words that the context already implies.
Yes.
Like a textbook teaches you to say, do you want to go to the store?
Mm.
But a native speaker just looks at you and says, want to go? Or you coming?
Exactly. Another major shift is dislocation, which is often called heads and tails.
Oh, I do this all the time.
Most native speakers do. Instead of building a perfectly structured sentence like, have you seen that new Marvel movie yet? A native speaker will cognitively offload the heavy subject first, just to get it out of the way.
So they throw the topic to the front of the back.
Right, they say. That new Marvel movie, have you seen it yet?
They completely separate the subject from the verb structure.
Yes, and they also heavily use tag questions.
Oh, right.
Instead of asking a direct question, they make a declarative statement and stick a tag on the end to force you to agree. Crazy weather we're having, isn't it?
They aren't actually asking for a meteorological debate.
No, they are just seeking social friction. They want you to say, yeah, totally, just to keep the chat flowing.
And we absolutely have to mention the modern, equotative. This single word causes massive confusion for learners.
It really, really does. Because if you learn English from a book, the word like is a preposition meaning similar to, or a verb meaning to enjoy.
But in modern spoken syntax, has entirely replaced the word said for quoting dialogue.
Yes.
A textbook says, my boss said, you're fired. But a native speaker today will say, my boss was like, you're fired. And I was like, no way.
Exactly. And if your brain tries to process that as my boss was similar to, you're fired, the entire sentence just collapses.
It makes no sense.
Your ear has to learn that in this specific syntactic slot was simply equals said.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all of this together, the connected speech, the stress-timed rhythm, the phrasal verbs, the broken syntax surviving the B2 listening wall requires a fundamental mindset shift.
It really does.
You have to stop expecting native speakers to articulate perfectly. Real English is chaotic, it's overlapping, and it's entirely rule-breaking.
It's messy.
But once you understand the mechanics behind the messiness, your brain stops fighting the wall of sound and actually starts flowing with it.
You stop feeling defeated by the pub and you start analyzing it. You embrace the reality of the street.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, There's one final, really provocative thought hidden in these sources that I want to leave you with.
Oh, what's that?
The text states, "Your ears are the architects. Your mouth is just the builder. Everything starts with absorbing the acoustic reality of language." But think about this in reverse.
Okay.
What happens to a native English speaker's brain when they try to learn a highly phonetic, strictly structured language like Spanish or German?
Oh, wow.
Right? Does a brain that was raised on the messy, chaotic, rule-breaking reality of English actively resist the clean, predictable rules of other languages? Are English speakers linguistically wired to look for a mess that isn't actually there?
That is such an interesting point.
It's a fascinating concept to mull over the next time you are out on a blind audio walk.